The first race in the 2023 Formula 1 season has been and gone. Max Verstappen and Red Bull dominated the weekend with the win, with the 1-2. And Mercedes, George Russell has come out and says he believes that Red Bull will win every race this season. He thinks they're going to do a 23-0 streak. He thinks they're going to do an Undertaker at WrestleMania and go on an unbeaten streak, a winning streak until the end of the season. Welcome back, guys, to Fog Racing, and we're here to talk about Georgie Boy Russell. He wasn't exactly happy with his performance, the Mercedes performance in the opening Grand Prix of the season. Now, maybe that led to some frustration. Maybe that's got something to do with him saying that Red Bull is going to win all 23 races. I think it's very early for him to come out and say that. Red Bull did have a gap over the other teams, but I don't think the gap was so big that you would come out and say, you know, Red Bull are going to dominate every single race. I mean, it could have been track dependent, or, you know, it might just take the other teams a race or two to catch up and get a little bit closer to Red Bull. What's your thoughts on George Russell coming out and saying this very early on? In my opinion, it sounds like an excuse straight away after one race.
It's an excuse. He spat the dummy. It's whatever you want to call it, because let's be real, it's never been done before. No team has ever won every race in a season. And see the fact now you're doing more races than ever, it'll never be done.
Yeah, plus, I mean, if we're talking from like a performance standpoint, yeah, it was clear that the Red Bull, right, was the best car that weekend. But it's not like they were dominant. We've seen much more dominant cars, even in recent years. We've seen much more dominant cars, like Mercedes. The 2014 Mercedes was like almost 2 seconds a lap faster than most cars, man. And even they had a couple of races they didn't win, whether it be reliability or whatever. I mean, you look at Ferrari. Ferrari's produced some really good cars, especially in 2002 and 2004. And even in those seasons, Ferrari weren't able to win every single race. So, yeah, no, I just don't see why George Russell's come out and said this. In my opinion, it's almost like trying to take pressure off Mercedes and put it on to Red Bull. He's trying to suggest that Red Bull should be winning every single race so that if they don't, then it's a failure, so to speak. And yeah, I just think these comments are unnecessary from George Russell. Then, of course, you have Total Wolff coming out and crying and complaining about the lack of pace.
No, Mikey, no, this is so not right.
You know, the lack of pace that Mercedes have, and it's like, you know, the Mercedes wasn't even that bad, let's be real. I mean, yeah, it's not where they want to be, but again, he's coming out, like he did last year, making out as if he gave Hamilton this horrible car to drive, even though last year they still had the third fastest car in the early parts of the season. So I just think George Russell and Total Wolff are both downplaying like how bad the, like, I mean, they're not just not being real. You know, they're trying to make out the Mercedes are worse than they are, and they're trying to make out that Red Bull are better than they are. That's my opinion on it.
That's exactly what they're doing. Total Wolff greeting, saying that they need to completely change the concept of the car. Whether you agree with that or not, like, they said the comments they're making, it would be understandable in my opinion if Ferrari were coming out and said, right, but Mercedes literally just had like 7 years of complete dominance. It's like the boy who cried wolf. I don't understand what they're going for here. It's almost rather, it's not like they're saying the fact all that Red Bull are going to do this. It's almost like they're complaining about, oh, we're entering a dominant period of one car winning all the races in F1. Well, you fucking had it. Where Ferrari been the past like decade?
Well, I don't look at it from that perspective. I'm not even talking about like dominant past seasons. I just don't agree with their assessment that Red Bull's going to win every race. The Red Bull car looked better than the rest, but I wouldn't say the Red Bull car was dominant.
Exactly. No, but this is right. Perez was getting held up by Leclerc. Only reason he got passed is because they tried a different strategy. Guess what? It worked.
I mean, if it was so dominant, I mean, Perez would have got past Leclerc straight away, and you know they were sped away into the distance and never been seen.
I'll put it this way, right? The Aston Martin, much better on its tyres than Ferrari. See if Perez was stuck behind Alonso, would he have got past him? Plus, if they did same strat, I'm not convinced.
Plus, if you look at the fastest lap times, I mean, Alonso's were not that far off.
I like Perez, right? But let's be real. If Max Verstappen retires for like 5 races this season, can you guarantee me that Perez is going to be there to win all 5?
I don't even agree with that. I don't think that the Red Bulls that dominant were if Max is in the race and he wins it. It's one race. Red Bull were the best team, yes. But it wasn't like they had a second over the other teams.
I know.
Like, we'll see how the next few races play off. Who knows? Maybe Red Bull's gap could get bigger, or maybe it will get smaller. But I think it's very early to suggest that Red Bull will win all 23 races when, let's be real, they weren't that dominant in the opening day, and we have seen much more dominant teams over the past decade, and none of those teams have even got close to winning every single race. So yeah, I don't see it happening this, especially with the most races ever happening. So yeah, I don't agree with George Russell. I do think Mercedes are very good at throwing the toys at the pram. You know, they did have years of domination, and now when they're not dominating, you know, it's almost like they're making excuses, and they're it's not fair, and you know, oh, we're not on the pace. It's like, yeah, you know what? Just, you're not the fastest car for once. How about you deal with it? Other teams had to deal with it.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? So, that's what it is. Going to have to play catch-up, just like the rest of the grid had to play catch-up. Anyway, guys, that's it. Can anybody catch Verstappen in the next race? We will find out. Lots of content coming to the channel, so make sure you stay tuned, subscribe, like, and we'll see you in the next one. But until then, peace.